welcome to HomeSide Chats. I'm Andrea French, Executive Director for TAG, Transportation Advocacy Group. In today's episode, we're joined by City of Houston Councilmember at Large, Sallie Alcorn. Welcome, Sallie, and thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you taking some time today to just have a chat with us and tell us what things are like for a council member for the City of Houston, and kind of what does your average day look like now?
Right. Well, much differently than what I thought it would look like as a new council member in the first 3 months. We are all struggling to adapt to this new normal. We're working at home as much as we possibly can. Still having public session and the regular business meeting of City Council downtown. But working, all of our staffs are working, my staff's all working from home. We have lots of meetings just like this on the computer. Really, it's dealing with the needs of constituents. There's all kinds of needs, as you can imagine right now. Also we're spending a good deal of time looking at policies and practices in other cities and how they're dealing with the COVID pandemic.
And can you share some specific examples of maybe, I think there's probably not one city that we're looking at to model, but there's probably a combination of practices that we're trying to lend for our fit.
Right. I think that local governments, all politics is local, right? And these issues are certainly affecting us at a local level. While the federal government is stepping in with some pretty significant stimulus money, it's a matter of timing right now. People are in need right now for basic needs, rent and food and things like that are very top of mind with the unemployment, what it is, with the layoffs and the furloughs. There are definitely considerations that are of utmost importance right now, and I'm talking again about basic needs. So that's really what I'm focusing on right now. Austin is looking at dipping into their reserves, $15 million in their reserves. They're going to have an ordinance setting up a fund on this Thursday. They've also done a rent kind of grace period for 60 days. Something I'm interested in is looking at if we can use HUD, Section 108 economic development funds to help landlords and small businesses until they receive their stimulus money. Any way we can provide some kind of bridge funding, if there's a way for us to do that. The city, of course, is the City of Houston's cash strapped too, and right. We're also looking at significant budget shortfalls based on a decrease in sales tax for sure. Right. So it's just a matter, we're going to have to be really creative. San Antonio, their apartment association, and the philanthropic community and the city are all joining forces to provide some relief for renters, all kinds of, I like the idea of joining with organizations and our very generous community to find solutions for people in this time.
And can you explain too, we Houston, we're experienced in disasters and
right.
and having to plan for the future, but also plan for the present. And as you mentioned, kind of the immediate needs. Can you share how the inability or the constraints of not being able to actually physically be around and near people, how has that changed some of the dynamics of how you actually deliver some of these services?
It's really, that's a really good point, because we love to roll up our sleeves and get out in the floodwaters and go help people. But when the advice is to stay home, you have to be a little more creative. There are some no contact volunteer opportunities. Crowdsourced rescue is one I talk about. Food and feed, which, literally there's no contact. You leave food and essentials at someone's doorstep. There are things to do like that. But yeah, you have to the extent people can donate to these causes, that's a great thing you can do from home. But it does change the dynamic. I know a lot of people who have loved ones in facilities, nursing facilities. My mom's 88, but fortunately she still lives on her own, so I'm able to see her and bring her food and all of that. But it's scary, it's different, and we're having to figure out how we can help people from our computers.
Right. It is a huge challenge. Can you share a little bit about how, your role and committee work and how you're kind of applying that. So you mentioned HUD and some of the resources and things like that. So it seems that each of the council members, you're still trying to stay in your expertise on the council and in your leadership roles, trying to apply it during a disaster. So can you share some of those skills that you're having to apply?
The committee that I chair, Regulatory and Neighborhood Affairs, what we've done as an office is reach out to each of the super neighborhoods. The super neighborhoods are kind of the umbrella organization over different civic clubs in various areas, just to see, make sure they have all the resources that we're pushing out from our office, and to see what specific needs they have in those areas. The committee work is actually we were going to hold, and we may still be, probably not, no, it's probably going to jump to May, but we were holding our biggest thing was to do a joint committee meeting with the Public Safety Committee on the Watson explosion. So that's, what we were working on at a committee level. As far as COVID related, again, since it's neighborhood affairs, I think the key there is just to make sure that we're reaching out to all the neighborhoods and making sure the specific needs of those neighborhoods are being addressed. And the district council members for each of the areas are also doing that. So I think there's a lot of information sharing and just asking, what do people need? That's basically where it's coming from. We're also about to start the budget process. Our first budget hearings are tomorrow, police and fire. So in the middle of all this is our normal budget thing. And that's a big interest of mine and something that I want to be very engaged in. I've talked a lot about sharing services with Harris County. I think that is a long-term way to address some of our budget woes. We are restricted. We have a structural imbalance every year. We are dipping into our reserves to meet our budget challenges, our operating expenses every year. And now more than ever is apparent that we need reserves. We need those reserves to help in times like this. So I'd like to stop that practice. And one of the ways in which we can do that is, I think, to double up and get rid of some duplicative and overlapping services between the county and the city. I've spoken. I think now everybody's talking about the health department. I'd like to look into, we're one of the only major cities who have a separate city-county public health division. And I'm not talking about the Harris Health, the treatment, the public health, infectious diseases, environmental health, food inspections, all of that. So I've been advocating for a shared services working group to look into how we can better jointly provide those services. As chair of Regulatory and Neighborhood Affairs, I'm really reaching out to each of the super neighborhoods, making sure they have the most updated resources related to COVID, and asking for their specific needs. What do they need? What do they have senior citizens in their area that need special attention or essentials? However I can help in the different areas of town. So Regulatory and Neighborhood Affairs really concentrates on neighborhoods. So what's going on in each of the neighborhoods, the heads of the super neighborhoods really have a good finger on the pulse of the different homeowners associations and civic associations within their geographic area. So I can work with the district council members to make sure that needs are being met. One of my personal interests is the city budget, and finding ways which we can bring the city into more of a structural balance, so we're not constantly dipping into our reserves to meet operating expenses. We do this every year for as many years as I've been down there, over a decade. So it's a practice that now it's illustrated even more how important it is that we have a really, really healthy reserves. And we do have healthy reserves. We have over our required amount, but we'd have even more if we weren't constantly dipping into them to meet operating expenses. So what I have been researching and want to move on is the creation of a shared services working group. This was a recommendation in our PFM report. These were consultants who came in and did a study of how the recommendations, there are over 60 of them that the city can do to come into structural balance. One of the recommendations was forming a shared services working group to see how the city and the county can better work together to jointly provide services. This will lead to economies of scale and gain efficiencies, so we can we can address the needs of our citizens. And this is very apparent in the health departments. We are one of the only large cities in the country that has a separate health department than the county. We have a city health department and Harris County Public Health, and there are a lot of overlapping services. So I'd like to explore how we can better work together.
Right, and I think that makes sense. In your former role with your former boss, Steve Costello, Chief Resiliency Officer, when we talk about a city being resilient, I don't know, and perhaps I'm wrong, I don't know if we had this type of a response in our minds. Resiliency meant, to me, prior to this pandemic, meant something very different. And so I'm sure you have been very thoughtful throughout this okay, so we're in it now, but looking forward, we now have to add another layer of resiliency to that definition.
Right. And actually in the city's Resilient Houston plan that was just released last month, mm-hmm. there is definitely a category for infectious diseases, pandemics. Okay. So that has been, not by Costello. Costello's now moved to it's all very confusing with the name switches, but he's now Chief Recovery Officer, right. Really dealing with Harvey recovery and all the 15, the 16 and Harvey floods. And now Marissa Aho from Los Angeles is our Chief Resilience Officer. Okay. Right. She has put forth the Resilient Houston plan that does address pandemics and things of this nature, and she is now looking at an addendum to that. Okay. As far as, it's in the plan. Mm-hmm. There are things to do to address it in the plan, but as far as moving up in the priority level, now that's got to be something that we do. So, and I do think that a lot of what Costello is working on with FEMA, with TDM, mm-hmm. It all is relevant because it's the same thing. We're in the same public assistance mode right now. We've got FEMA down here helping with testing, helping with all kinds of things. The accounting's the same. The cost share, ratio is similar. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if Costello gets involved in helping us navigate recovering from this as well. I think there's a lot of similarities. Right now, it's all being handled at OEM and health department, mm-hmm. But it's the same. A disaster is a disaster, and the way we work with the federal government and with our intermediaries at the state mm-hmm. follows the same course of action.
Right. And I would imagine too, that for the most part, it is a similar scale of the vulnerable populations, also that need kind of the access to the care, and the kind of the city services and things like that too. So there's kind of overlap with that as well.
Right. And as this pandemic evolves, first we were only talking about the elderly and people with underlying medical conditions. And now those vulnerable populations have grown.
Right. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, since, TAG really does focus on the infrastructure piece with respect to TAG and the work that we do, talking about the investment of infrastructure, into infrastructure. One of the things that we're focusing on right now is how important infrastructure remains during all of this, right? So movement of goods, movement of supplies, to keep things going forward, even when we are really being kind of stuck in place. And so one of the other things that we talk about too is moving out of this. So the recovery piece is also going to be a huge investment in infrastructure. It's immediate jobs, and it's what sustains us and gets our kind of economy back on its feet. And so as you're looking at budget issues and kind of policies and planning, I was curious kind of how you felt infrastructure ties into some of those initiatives.
Well, infrastructure is going to be all in. We're going to be all in on infrastructure, like you said, for jobs. Not only does our infrastructure desperately need upgrading, transit infrastructure, our street and drainage infrastructure, our water, wastewater infrastructure, all of these infrastructure projects, we've underinvested for decades, and so they're in desperate need anyway. But as a job creator, and it's essential. I think it'll be a real back to basics budget, and we'll be looking public safety, infrastructure, the things the city really needs to roll out in the recovery of this. So yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a big priority. It will certainly be a big priority for me to make sure that these projects are on track. I've noticed just driving around, the little bit of driving around I've done, that a lot of projects are moving along, and hopefully if we can keep the construction workers safe, that's a good time, because the traffic is so light right now. I noticed on Westheimer, just outside the loop, they're doing all that work right now, and all the construction trucks are parked in the Dillard's parking lot. I thought, when else would this ever be able to take place?
Right. Opportunity to stage a lot of equipment and move at a pace that is not, it's a bit unprecedented. One of the other things too, is you see people out on the trails, right? Bikeways, I think, starting to experience the importance of our trails. And so I think that might start to shift some support or additional support for our bikeways and connecting our trails more. People are finding what it is truly like to navigate.
I mean, definitely a silver lining of this is to just everybody is outdoors. And I agree with you. I think bikeways and hiking trails and walkways and wider sidewalks and all kinds of things will be a good, something good that comes out of this. It's I know, alarming. Sometimes there's too many crowds. I had to tell my own running partner, we can't run together anymore. But there's too many people, and I try to I run at Memorial Park. I try to get there before 7 a.m. because it gets crowded, which is a good thing and a bad thing in these times. But I think that the city's really trying to take a look at that. But no doubt, and before this all started, I was doing No Car Friday and really was taking transit. Our whole office was taking transit every Friday, either walking or biking or on the bus or on the train every Friday. And our little baby step, toward making, doing something for traffic and congestion in this city. That Metro was actually filming right before things got really bad on the Metro.
I think I remember that. I think I saw that on social media. Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. So, now, of course, so many people still depend on it. I think they've done a good job of cleaning the buses and spacing people. They put placards on all the buses. So, I think, transportation, infrastructure, transit, all still a big priority, and we just see how much it's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things too that we're looking at is, as we looked toward, the legislative session, the state session starting in January, we felt we had a good understanding of what we were going to be asking for as it relates to transportation. And now it's as if we will all have to kind of wipe that policy board clean.
Right.
And kind of, like you said, the back to basics. But does it also open up opportunities for discussions that we would never have been able to have?
Right. And I think the whole work from home dynamic's going to be this is going to be a big shift. Yeah. I think that people are understand, big companies with 4,000 employees, and more so many are all working from home and noticing, wait, this is kind of working, so I think, hopefully that helps with congestion, or at least scattered schedules. And I think there's just going to be a lot more flexibility in the workplace. The 9 to 5, be in your desk every second, putting everybody on the freeways at the same time. We're going to be rethinking that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things too, is efficiency, right? So are we all able to see how much more efficiently we can do things now that we are forced to do them online or electronically? I know there was an example given in another conversation about, online permitting from the city and things like that, right? So we now have opportunities to see firsthand how much more efficient we can be, personally and professionally.
Getting all that online, but when that came on the agenda, we were all like, well, it took a pandemic, but we finally got this online. Got online permitting done. So Yeah,
No, and
no, absolutely. It is. I mean, I miss being around people for sure. I think everybody does. I mean, there's a certain aspect of work that is important, that you're with people
yeah.
and having face-to-face conversations. But you're right, efficiency. I mean, you're able to get things done, I think, in a lot more efficient manner
Yeah.
without the distractions that are at an office.
Yeah. So, kind of finally rounding out the conversation, one of the things I like to ask is we've all learned a lot about ourselves in all of this. I myself, definitely extrovert times 10. And now that, I'm home with my fiance and two children, and we're all in each other's space. I do still need my space.
Yeah.
But, surprisingly, I can balance a lot more than I thought I could. And so
Yeah.
that's been very interesting. So I'm curious if you yourself have kind of learned anything that's been a little surprising.
Well, it's different. I'm the same way. I mean, I just spent every night for the last year, out with people, talking to people, right,
Right,
in a
right, right.
campaign. So this has really, in some way, been kind of a pause, which is it's allowed me to work more on policy and spend more time reading and researching than I have when you're out and about in the world all the time. So I enjoyed that. We're empty nesters, but we have one. A kid that's back in school who came home for spring break and still here. So
Right.
so
Okay.
but I have 4 kids scattered all over the place, and so it's really, my husband's working from home, I'm working from home. We have lunch together.
Right.
And yeah, it's super different. I think I'm learning that I need a routine, so I'm trying
Mhm.
to get into a routine as if I was going to the office, because I think
Yeah.
we all need to take a shower and get up and get
No,
going.
it is very true. Every day can't feel like the weekend, right?
Yeah.
And no,
Right.
it's necessary. Our bodies need that. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you,
And
Andrea. This was fun.
yeah, and really appreciate kind of the snapshot into your daily life and commitment to service and leadership for us. And we appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thanks. You too.
That was HomeSide Chats. We hope you enjoyed that episode with Councilmember Sallie Alcorn. This series would not be possible without our 2020 mobility partners. We thank you for your sponsorship and your partnership. Stay tuned for more HomeSide Chat episodes coming soon.